your host, Mimosa,
and co-host Kareem.
Welcome to Sometimes We're Bougie and Sometimes We Hood, to healing, navigating grief. It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance. Welcome in, everybody. Well, I'm not sure what happened. What's going on with our internet signal today?
It's raining out here.
Am I super choppy?
You were for a second, and out yet you still are, because it's not registering what you're saying.
Oh, that's not good. That's not good. All right, well, we're gonna keep going. We just gonna keep it moving. So, welcome in. All right, family. Let's settle in. Welcome back to Sometimes We Bougie.
Sometimes We Hood. Let's go.
The space where we talk about grief the way it actually shows up, and not the way people wish it could or would or should be, right? So last week we talked about what grief really is beyond transition. We named that, grief is about loss, change, and the life we did not ask for, right? So this week we're going deeper. We're talking about the myths of grief and what we were taught that keeps us stuck, because a lot of what grief is so painful. What makes grief is so painful to deal with. So, and then of course, because of the rules people put around it, right? So if you're listening and you've ever thought like, I should be over this by now, I shouldn't still feel this way, I shouldn't be grieving, I need to be strong, I'm still sad, something is wrong with me, then this episode is for you. So take a deep breath with me. Right? You don't have to perform here. You don't have to sound strong. You could just listen in and hear what we have to say today. What's good, Cousin Kareem?
I'm good. How you doing?
All is well. I hope this thing like kicks in. The weather's kind of gray and rainy here too, so I don't know if that's what's messing with my internet signal. It is not. Yeah. I'm not happy with that right now. I'm not happy.
It's double on outside too. It's raining out here. It just started raining harder.
So for those of you who are new to Sometimes We're Hood, Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood, Auntie Mimosa is here in the ATL area.
And Cousin Kareem in Hawaii.
And Cousin Kareem is in Hawaii. Yes, is in Hawaii. So we in two separate places, two different time zones. You know what I'm saying? But we make it work. We make it do what it do.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Let's start off about what do you think are some of the myths behind grief?
For most part, it seems like people think that grief is just a momentary saddening that lasts like one day, and then you're on to the next day with it. Whatever subject matter is, whether it's sadness about loss of a job, loss of life, of somebody that you love or a lot of people love, and it's not really been explored. I mean, I think a lot of people, they look at movies to try to express their emotions towards the law without really giving it some, give and take. They don't realize that it might just sneak up on you. You might have a thought, and all of a sudden, that thought brings you to that loss of that person because of memory. And then you're going back through it again. They forget that can happen. I mean, it really is like a portal. to what you're doing right then and there.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah, I'm over here trying to close some of these. I got a lot of. Yeah, I have no idea. I have like a lot of things going on this side, so I'm hoping that maybe if I close some of these pages, my internet signal act a little better. But before we break down the myths, like let's talk about why they exist. Most of us were raised in cultures that don't exactly know what to do with grief, right? We're taught don't cry too much, don't burden others, don't dwell on the past, keep moving, right? I remember hearing like two myths growing up. One was like a pregnant woman shouldn't go to a funeral, right? And children shouldn't go to funerals. Those are like the two things that I kind of grew up with. Like children shouldn't go to funerals and pregnant women shouldn't go to funerals. Why pregnant women shouldn't go to funerals is beyond me. I have no idea what that what that equates to. It was something like myths, like a pregnant woman shouldn't look into a grave because they'll never be able to fill the baby up. They'll always be hungry or something like that. I don't know. Something bizarre. You know what I'm saying? Bizarre and crazy. Yeah. What myths have you heard when it comes to grief, Cousin Kareem?
Yeah, I've heard that one. I haven't heard the other one, but it's just I've heard that in some ways, like they're not supposed to be viewing death in the interest of giving birth because it confuses the child. But I really don't have any conclusive evidence of that. So, I've never seen it. I never experienced it. I should say that's the right word. I never experienced anybody losing their child because they went to the funeral. But then again, I've never seen a pregnant person at a funeral. So, so expressing the same thing.
Right, that part. Oh goodness. Yeah.
So I haven't yet to experience it, so I don't know if that's even counted in the whole stream of things,
and the encompass and everything, right? So we learned to package our pain very neatly, even when it's tearing us up inside, right? And these myths didn't just come from malice; they came from discomfort. People repeat what they were taught because they didn't want to feel helpless or hopeless watching someone suffer. But, good intentions can still cause harm. And today, like, we're gently unlearning some of that, right? We're gently unlearning some of that. So, hey, welcome in all on the TikTok side. Of course, like during the podcast, I don't always engage on TikTok, but of course, like, share, and comment where you from. All right. And of course, hello to Facebook fam, YouTube fam, Instagram fam. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm hoping this glitch that we got going on where I'm glitchy for the first time just really dissipates.
Normally it's me. So
right. No, right. Cousin Kareem is the one that's usually sounding like a robot going on. No, it's me this time. This is unreal. But let's talk about the first one, right? Time heals all wounds. Let's think about that. Let me do something real quick. I'm gonna step away from the camera just really, really quick.
Okay.
But talk about that, Cousin Kareem.
Time heals all wounds. Yeah. In time, you should, if you deal with your issues, then things should sometimes get better. There's no time frame on it. There's no definite time frame on it. It could be a year, 5 years. It could be a couple of months, depending on how you handle the situation of loss.
Right.
But after that, now it varies on what you do to get it in order. because a lot of times we don't like to talk because it's uncomfortable. We don't know what we're supposed to say, what we're supposed to do. But that's part of the grieving process. And if you allow yourself to go through it, then it's just going to be dragged along because you haven't gone through the necessary steps to escape that moment of time.
Right. And that's the big one. And that's the big one that everyone uses. Like, time heals all wounds. And that myth about that one. The truth about that is time does not heal grief. It doesn't heal grief, right? If anything, time allows you to tolerate grief. It allows you to comprehend. It allows you to soak it in. It kind of allows you to manage, right? So what do you do with that? What time does? Like, what do you do with that? Like, what is that? So grief doesn't fade just because days pass by. Unprocessed grief just sits there waiting, right? So, for example, because of the transition of my, I like the man that I call my father, I'm still processing that because it was very fast. It was really quick and it wasn't a matter of like a tragedy. It was, got the phone call, I'm in the hospital. I get to the hospital 3 days later, he's gone. And I'm like, how? You know what I'm saying? How does that happen? So, and a lot of us are still processing. We're still processing that because it was in fact that a whole month that went by already. We're still processing. Our brains are still processing that loss, right? And then on top of that, the family has just had another loss where there was we had a double funeral Friday in North Carolina. We lost a cousin like earlier last week, Monday, Tuesday, and then turn around and his father transitioned that Saturday. So there was a double funeral in North Carolina. I did not attend. But again, processed it. And I'm sure my cousin, who was her brother and her father, she's still trying to process that as well, because the transition of her brother was sudden. And then to turn around and lose her father that within that same week, and her having to plan a double funeral. Yes, she's still that's unprocessed. She's still processing that for right now. She is still trying to comprehend. She's still trying to comprehend her grief. She's still trying to comprehend her loss, her brother and her father. Yeah, she's still trying to get that in her mind. And that's why some people feel blindsided like years later when a memory hits them just as hard as day one. And it's not that they didn't move on. It's that they never had permission to actually grieve, So instead of asking like, how long has it been? A better question is, how have I been caring for myself in this time? I'm going to say that again. The question is not how long has it been? The better question is, how have I been caring for myself in this time? Because healing is not automatic. It's intentional. And it's not linear. Okay? Say that again. Healing is not automatic. It's intentional and it's not linear. Okay? So when it comes to grief and our healing and these myths about how fast someone should get over an incident, let's put it that way, like how fast someone should get over a loss, how fast, whether it's your job, whether it's a relationship, whether It's the loss of a loved one, whether you're grieving yourself, whether you're grieving a loved one while they're still alive, whether you're a caregiver, you know, you're, and there's other things that's in that. You may have resentment tied into that grief. You may have guilt tied into that grief that you're dealing with. So it's not just grief by itself. There's layers, there's many layers, and that's what we are here to talk about.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Cousin Kareem?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your closeness with that. If it's a person, that is, and even if it's a job, it's like, how did that really relate to you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can, like, if you're like doing DoorDash, like you lose your job, it's like, is that, you know what I mean? If that's your only source of income, it could put you back in a certain thought process. Like, man, I really need to make this money. Like, how can I, you know? But that's more of like a, well, let me just leave that alone. But I was gonna say, to me, it's a different setup in life. You know, when you think about like DoorDash compared to like a job, you know. But there's some people who run that DoorDash operation like it's the only job they have. It's like the only means of them getting money. So, but if that thing means so much to you, but when it comes to like people and relationships,
right,
it really touches you, and you really have to look at it like, was this person really that person in my life? Like, were they filling a role that I lived with? Not that was just present, but not really available. And I think that's where it makes a difference, when you feel like this person really filled that emotional aspect of my life, that mental aspect of my life. They don't have to feel the physical, you know, because you could be across the world from somebody and still have that closeness, you know. But it's just a matter of, do they fill that role for you? And I don't think a lot of people look at it until that person passes, where you're like, wait a minute. Now I have nobody to talk to. Now I have nobody to share, experience my rage, my
and not just with loss of life, with the ending of relationships. Like my cousin Pre, he's on Instagram Live. Hey Pre. And he's like, it's been very difficult. It has been very difficult. All the loss that our family has endured, you know, they say it comes in threes. Well, yeah, it came in threes, all right. It came in threes. It came in threes, all right. And super fast, right? It came in threes and super fast. So, but when we talk about that whole thing about time healing all wounds, it just time that is, I think that is one of the worst sayings that could have ever been created, right? Or spoken about. Time wounds. Maybe physical wounds, because it does take time for a physical wound to heal. However, a mental or an emotional wound, that takes much longer to heal, you know, because again, it could be embedded, it could be threaded with other things, not just grief, but like I said, resentment, with guilt, with pride, with shame. There's a host of things that it could be embedded in, or intertwined, or meshed in, you know. And it's, to me, that time heals all wounds is almost like, you know, when you would have a physical wound, you want to pick that scab and you trying to get that scab off, and you get in the shower, you get it wet, and you able to pick like a little bit of it, and then you hit a spot where it's not ready to come off, and now you got to leave it alone because, you know, cause it to bleed all over again. And now, you know, you waiting and you trying to pick around it until you can like really get that right, and allow distractions, just not to think. Right, it does. So my cousin Bree, he's like I said, he's answering us on Instagram. It does. It allows distractions, distractions to come in and just not to think about it. However, like I said, when I've said this before, when you're grieving and you're going through the process, one, you have to give it a name. You have to, one, recognize it, recognize the fact that you're grieving. Two, give it a name. Three, once you recognize it and give it a name, now you know how to deal with it, right? So that's who we are. And then distractions, they're okay. And that's why you find like so many people will rush back to work after a loss, whether it's physical loss, whether it's, if they can go back to work, or they put themselves or immerse themselves in becoming busy, to keep their mind off of thinking about the loss, whether it's financial, whether it's a relationship, whether it is whether it's if you're a caretaker, and you're grieving, again, you're grieving the loss of yourself, like as you age, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times you find yourself immersing yourself in busy work, not necessarily distraction, but busy work to keep your mind off of it, right? So any more thoughts on that, Cousin Kareem?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, depending on the closeness of you and that, well, we're talking about people that it's the closeness that you have with them, whatever emotional ties that you have with that person,
right?
Because the closer the, in life, you generally realize, like, you start to separate the older you get, people that you don't want to let into your emotional cycle, because not just because of death, but just because of life. It's just like, I don't need to intertwine and know everything about you. You don't need to know everything about me. We just work together. We just akin to each other. But we're not going. Right. I'm not going to share anything with you because I don't want that closeness, because I don't want to deal with the separation.
Right.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. It's just, well, I mean, I know for me, it's just, I just don't like talking to people, about things that they should know about. If they don't understand it, and I realize I'm trying to get people to understand stuff. It's just like, some people haven't even come into contact with what their actual emotions are about certain situations. And that's, to me, that's frustrating. It's like, how did you not think about it? But it's a level of care. It's a level of trying to adapt a certain part of your life to leave room for not the ununderstood,
right?
And then wanting to talk about it. Are you able to talk about it? That portion of your life that you can't really understand. And I find that most people, they don't even want to talk about it. They don't even want to think about it. They just rather talk about what's on TV, radio, what's possibly happening in their life, but never to an eventful stage where they actually contemplate, I never really thought about it like that. And it's just like, why isn't anybody thinking like that? Why isn't anybody on that level of complacency? Just say, yeah, I never actually thought about it like that. Let's talk about it. No, it's never talked about. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to continue on, and that's really about it. Just, I talked about it briefly, and that's about it. And I find that with everybody else, it kind of lays way to 80% of the people are like that, and only 20% actually want to talk about it.
Right. So let's talk about the let's jump into like the second myth, right? What do you think the most common second myth in dealing with grief is? What do you think it is? Like, so we said the first myth is time heals all wounds, right? So what do you think the second most common myth, or the second most common thing is said when it comes to grief?
That time, it just takes time to get over it.
No, well, no, that's the time heals all wounds. So the second
Yeah.
most common myth is that a lot of things that people say is be strong. So, and how many of us have heard this? Be strong. You have to be strong. Don't fall apart. How many? I know I've said it and had to stand in that. I have to be strong. But yeah. So hang on. Let's see. So my cousin Priest says people hurt alone. People don't rush to group for healing. Pain is alone, and it sucks because someone wants to help, but we don't allow folks in. That is true. A lot of times, yes, and that is true. And it depends, and that depends on, I want to say it depends on the person. It depends on, just say it depends on the person and their environment and what they grew up with. And because some people will seek healing in groups. They will seek healing in their circle. They will seek healing through therapy. Some people will do that. Others will close themselves off. They will do that. And like I'm one of those individuals that will close themselves off. I retreat. And when I'm in pain, when I'm going through my pain in my processing, I retreat. And what's odd is that we actually started this podcast to not just help others, assist others in dealing with grief, but to assist ourselves. Like this platform was born out of grief. This platform was born out of wanting to put out there and talk and educate people about grief and the types of grief that was out there. This platform was born out of that notion that if I talk about my grief, if I talk about grief and educate people on about grief and the different types of grief and where grief comes from and how we can heal, that then becomes my healing as well. And it's not a matter, and I don't know, you can call it a group or, but so many people really don't understand or don't comprehend or they don't understand that like grief is the prequel. That's the prequel to depression. And if you don't get a handle on it, or if you don't understand what you're looking at, or you don't understand or comprehend what you're feeling and comprehend what you're dealing with, then it'll definitely lead in that direction quickly, very quickly, before you know it, right? So, but I want to be clear about this. Like being strong doesn't mean being silent either. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. Being strong doesn't mean being silent. Strength is not about holding it together at all costs. Strength is not about, or it is about, being honest about what you're carrying. Right? I'm going to say that again. Strength is not about holding it together at all costs. Strength is about being honest about what you're carrying. That's what it is. And when we tell people to be strong, we're often teaching them to suppress their pain, to push down their pain. And suppressed pain doesn't disappear. It shows up as anger, anxiety, exhaustion, numbness, and some physical illness. So if you missed that, I'm going to say that again. When people tell you to be strong, it often teaches us to suppress pain, to suppress our pain. And when we suppress our pain, suppressed pain doesn't disappear. It shows up as anger, anxiety, exhaustion, numbness, and physical illness. That's how it shows up in our lives. Real strength is like allowing yourself to feel without shame and know that it's okay to fall apart. It's okay to need help, and it's okay to not be okay. And I think that's one of the things that we have people who want to have these unemotional funeral services, right? They want to have these unemotional funeral services or memorial services, where nobody is falling apart, where nobody is falling over the casket or tripping in and falling into the casket because they're extremely hurt. And it's like nobody wants that. It's like nobody wants people to express how they really feel the loss of a person, or no one wants anyone to express how they feel about the loss of employment. Hey, big sis, what's going on? Pastor George, it's like nobody wants to have this type of, memorial service where people are rolling all over the floor because they're hurt. Well, if that's what you have to do in order to get it out, then do that.
I think a lot of times, like services after the fact, people are upset because they didn't express what they were supposed to express towards that person.
Mm-hmm.
They feel a certain way, like, yeah, I can talk to the air and they'll go out, but it's not them. It's representative of how much time they actually had that they didn't make to clear the air or the substance with somebody. They just, I'll just get to it later. It shows the importance of communication while somebody is present versus after the fact. And then they don't know how to deal with the fact that that person's not in front of them anymore, or they can confide or talk to or even correct somebody or be corrected by that somebody because it's done. It's like, I'm not going to hear from that person. But what they don't realize is you're only looking at it on the carnal sense. You're not looking on the spiritual sense. If you believe in the spiritual world, because that person can come back and give you a little bit of something, but it's not all the time, because maybe that person wasn't spiritually enough to reach out to that level.
Right.
And so it's just a whole mix-up, in essence, of what people are trying to get concluded in this situation of passing away. And I don't think that people know, or they want to know, how to further the communication. It's like they feel it on one level, that's it. That's the way the world permits it. That's the way the movie said, and that's it. And I can never equate having communication further with this person. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And you deal with that in a whole bowl of depression. And if you don't approach it the right way, then it's the depression bowls that's going to keep getting bigger. And sooner or later, you're going to be swimming in it. And then
what about, let's talk about this. So with this whole thing, like even with relationships, the whole be strong, right? When your relationship ends, like you say, when you leave a job, the whole be strong. Why are you not allowed? That's my question. Like, why are we as people are not allowed to fall apart? Why are we not allowed to express these emotions that we're having? Why is that not? Like, it seems as if we're not allowed to do any of that. We're not allowed to express. We're not allowed to grieve. We're not allowed to just like really get that whatever we're feeling, whatever that emotion is. It's like we're not allowed to express that and get that out.
I think it's because people don't understand that there's another level to it. You had a physical connection. Now your connection moved from physical to spiritual, and you can still have a connection to understanding, to let that connection come through that other person spiritually to you in dreams or just emotions or just repetitive time frames. Things can come back from that person in those moments where you don't have to desire those moments because you know that they're going to connect with you in those moments at some point in time. And I think that there's no right or wrong way to it. It's just time. So you said you can't put a time frame on the grief because you just never know when it's going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to let it come when it comes. And then just handle it the way that it's supposed to handle. If people around you can't understand, then why do they have to understand? Why do they have to understand to the point that, no, not why do they have to understand? Like, why do they need an explanation put on that situation at that moment for an understanding? I'm grieving. That's it. Bye. Peace. I'm out. Let me go step outside for however long it's going to take. I'm going to take a break. Matter of fact, I'm going to take off the rest of the day. You know, and it's a level of understanding from the other side of the person on the other side who isn't going through that situation and say, I've been there before. Now, if they've never been there before, then there's something that maybe they never had anybody close. People come from small families. So if they come from a small family, they haven't experienced the realm of understanding of losing multiple people at the same time, you know, or losing one person one day and another person the next week or the next day. They haven't done it because they haven't had that association. I know somebody who literally has their brother, their child, 2 children, and that's it. Like everybody else is gone. Like their father had 1 sibling, 1 child. So what are we talking about? We have a family of 10 people or 8 people. It's like you know what I mean? Like for us, it's just like we got like 80 cousins, 82 cousins. You know what I mean? It's like more than that, really. And then it's like compared to 8 people complete total. It's the avenue of emotional understanding of what a loss means to somebody. It's more complicated, more people that you have.
Right. And here's the thing though, you know, like people also please know that like you do not lose your dignity by grieving.
Yeah.
You do not lose your dignity by grieving. You do not lose your dignity by losing your shit. Sorry. Not sorry. But you know what I'm saying? You know, okay, you don't you don't lose your dignity at all. You do not. And I don't understand like why I'm really working to comprehend this lack of emotion, this lack of showing emotion during a memorial service or lack of emotion. Like it's almost as if you have to be this piece of stone when you're going through a loss, regardless of it, if it is somebody's transition, whether it is the loss of employment, whether it's the loss of a relationship, whether it's the loss of something valuable, very valuable, your car, jewelry, whatever that loss is, your home gets broken into. It's almost like you are not supposed to show any emotion, you know, and or reaction to this, whatever you're experiencing, whatever grief that you're going through, whatever it is that you're going through, that you're grieving. It's like we're not supposed to show any emotion whatsoever. And that is not right.
No, that's just people's perspective on things.
Right. And that is far furthest from the truth. Like we are not living in a Victorian era. We're not the Bridgertons. We don't live in that time where, you know, things that you experienced, you had to there was this. That's not us. That's not where we are.
No, they're not. I think
And
it's
so
a
many. Mm-hmm.
lack of people seeing where they fit in. You know, where I guess no, I'm not even going to say that because people have stayed. I keep on referring back to TV shows because for most people in America, at least, they've never traveled abroad to actually see how people communicate in in yeah, just in any other way but on TV. They has never seen people interact, maybe with sports or whatever like that. I mean, they've never really seen, studied, or just accepted the fact that some people just don't act the same way when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to certain things. And when you go to those places and you experience the melancholy feeling of these emotions, you realize that people are probably going to act like you behind those closed doors in that sanctuary or that place of not confidence um
Of sorrow. The
yeah,
place
sorry.
of sorrow.
Yeah, and it's just like, but people tend to want to hide it to be strong, and it's just like, is that the definition of strong? That's not a definition of strength. By not being able to express your true feelings or how you felt about that person, those people, or however, you know, because how would you feel? And I think that's the struggle. It's just like we don't into existence or take into any kind of way that maybe these people are looking to see how we're gonna fall out because they've gone on, you know, because they're not here anymore. And in that sense of thinking, you don't show any emotion. Okay, well, they passed on. Okay, cool. Back to my life.
Right. Right. That part.
Like, did I really mean anything to you?
Right.
Like, you know, they ask, and it's just like at that point, they're on the other side. They're on the spiritual side now.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so now it's like, how do you respond to that? And then later on, a couple of days later, you find out that, oh, they did stop and boo-hoo cry where they were all by themselves. And now they're on the floor, just like balled up or spread out and banging the floor, kicking cabinets, kicking whatever came out of the cabinets, you know? And it's just like, where was that initial response? Of course, I'm talking about it from the other side. But in all essence of it, it's just like, why do we feel that people hold back from letting other people know how they feel about a person not being physically here anymore? Why do we need to hold these people? Why do we need to hold back is the question that I have.
That's what I was saying. Why do we have to be emotionally suppressed? Like we have to suppress our emotions because of course, you know, there's that always that one saying, it's life is 90%, life is not about what happens to you, it's about how you react. So if that reaction, like, are we not supposed to react? Are we not supposed to show that emotion? Like that, and that leads us to myth 3, like they wouldn't want you to be sad.
No, they would want you to be sad. It's just, that's what I'm saying. That's why I brought that up. It's like, I'm thinking, here you go, you just pass on, boom. You walk down the street, all of a sudden, turn to the boom, hit by a car, boom. Now you're up in the air looking down on the situation like, oh, damn. Then you wait for the phone calls to be made and people get open. Hey, so-and-so got hit by a car. Oh, okay. Oh, well, let me know when the funeral is. Bye, click. It's like, wait,
no.
It's
no. That's great.
It's like, damn, it's like, imagine that happens like 20, 30 times. All the people that you know. Now the person who's on the other side, the spiritual side of things, he's looking down like, wait a minute. I can't believe that nobody's concerned about what's going to happen next. Nobody's concerned about how my life ended. So, you know, just right then and there, nobody cares. It's just like,
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far, but that one is tricky. They wouldn't want you to be sad. That one is tricky because it does sound very loving. It sounds very genuine. they wouldn't want you to be sad because, you know, but, here's what that saying actually does. It turns your sadness into something wrong,
Okay.
right? Missing someone doesn't dishonor them. It proves how deeply you love them. Okay, so I'm gonna say that again. When you tell somebody, oh, they wouldn't want you to be sad, they want you to move on, they want you to enjoy your life, it makes the person that is walking through grief, it turns their sadness into something wrong. Now there's the thought that, oh, I shouldn't be sad. I have to be, there it is. I have to be strong. I don't have time to be sad because my mom wouldn't want me to be sad. My dad wouldn't want me to be sad. My son wouldn't want me to be sad. My grandmother wouldn't want me to be sad. My sisters, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, whoever it is would not want me to be sad. That is the furthest from the truth. That is furthest the furthest from the truth, because when you miss that person, it does not dishonor them. It proves how much you care, how much you love them, right?
Yep. And you go back, you rewind the times that you spent with them. And if you spent a lot of time, you have a lot to rewind. So you should take the time to let the rewind happen and place your emotions in that time frame. Because they were good and there are bad times. A lot of the times, the good times will turn into bad times because you know that you couldn't express that feeling of greatness without that person being there. You can't place that feeling and say, hey, you know what? I could experience that without this person. No, that time that you were together, that moment, express what you were feeling. Which is why I'm trying to get away from that.
But here's the thing. Love and sadness can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
You can do both. You can love that person and be sad at the same time. You can love and miss that individual at the same time.
You can.
Right, you know what I'm saying? You can love and miss a place, a person, place, a thing at the same time. You can be sad that you lost it. Right? And you can honor the memory of that individual and still grieve their absence. You can celebrate their life and still cry because you miss them. Grief is not betrayal. It's a testament, right? It's a testament to the connection. It's a testament to the connection that you have with that individual, right? So, another myth to step into as our time begins to wrap up. Everyone grieves the same way. Bull malarkey. That's not what I wanted to say, but bull malarkey.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody does not grieve the same way. That's BS.
Okay? Everybody doesn't love the same way. They can't
exactly.
And we agree the same way.
All day. And we all seen this, right? We've all seen it. One person cries all the time. Somebody else goes quiet. Somebody just throws themselves into their work. Somebody else avoids everything and everybody. And we as people judge each other consistently. Stop it. Stop it. Like, who are you to judge your family members or a friend about how they grieve.
Yeah, exactly.
Who are you? Stop it. Stop judging people altogether in its entirety. Just stop. Just stop. You know?
That's a
Just stop.
definite.
Listen, you cannot judge a book by its cover. You need to open it and read the pages. Cut it out. You
Yep.
know? And, people have a tendency, oh, this person, they're not grieving enough. They're grieving too much, or they're crying too much. They're not crying enough. They're not doing enough. Grief is not uniform.
No,
It doesn't have to be uniform. And I said this and will always say there is no right way. There's no wrong way. There's no correct way. There's no rule book. Only honest ways from yourself. Nobody else can say how you can, should, would, could grieve. Nobody has the right to tell anybody else how to do that. Nobody.
no.
Some people feel like everything is immediate. Some people take their time. Some people need to stay busy. Some people need silence. And none of those are wrong. Not a one. And comparing your grief only creates more pain. When you compare your grief or you're comparing somebody else's grief, it creates more pain in that situation, or with it strains that relationship. It strains that relationship. And you don't have a right to compare your grief to anybody else's. And you don't have a right to say how somebody should grieve, shouldn't grieve. You don't have that right. You do not.
No.
Focus on your own grief. Recognize your own grief. Name your own grief. Label your own grief. Deal with your own grief. You don't have the right to say how somebody else should be grieving. You don't have a right to label anybody else's grief.
Because you didn't go through it. You didn't go through it. They didn't go what they went through. You didn't have the connection with that person that they're grieving, that you both were grieving about, to know what their relationship was, how close they were.
Exactly.
It doesn't make a difference. You just leave it alone and not get into the judgment phase, because it doesn't look comfortable to you what they're doing. Stupid.
Mm-hmm. Myth number 5: moving on means letting go. No, it doesn't. No, it does not. Now, this might be the most damaging one of all, right? Moving on means letting go, because far too often, we're told that in order to heal, you have to let go. Who says?
Yeah, let go of what?
Right.
Let go of what?
You don't move on from love, right? You learn how to carry it differently. You learn how to transform it into something different, right? Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means integration. It means integrating. Your loved one doesn't disappear from your life just because they're not physically here. And I've said this before, grief, it doesn't end, it evolves, right? And you don't stop loving. I always said grief is love with nowhere to go, right? You don't stop loving, you just learn to live with the love in a different way, in a new way. It looks different, right?
Yeah.
It looks different. It evolves different. It does. And there are times where, like, when I talk about my oldest son, I'll talk about Darius. There are moments when I can talk about him and not cry. And then there's moments I talk about him and tear up. There's moments when I talk about my mom and I don't cry, and there's moments I talk about her and tear up. There's moments I talk about my sisters and don't cry, and there's moments when I tear up. The same goes for like my dad now. There's moments when I talk about him and I'm fine and I can laugh and joke, and then I have moments where I think about him and I tear up. There's, I mean, there's moments when I think about relationships. It's the same with relationships. Like there's moments when I think about relationships that I was in and I tear up, or not necessarily tear up, become angry, become mad when I think about some of my past relationships. And then there's times when I think about them, or there might be an experience, like I see something and it's funny and I'll laugh about it. You know, there's times where I can talk about them and I'm okay. Grief is the same way. You can laugh about it, you can talk about it, you can cry over it, you can tear up, you take deep breaths, tolerate it, right?
Definitely. You should.
Mm-hmm.
I think trying to lock it away is a more hurtful phase of dealing with it than actually just dealing with it straight up, because those emotions, which were caused by thoughts of remembrance from somebody who has passed away already, they're there for a reason. They come back in certain times when you think about certain things that made you feel a certain way about something else. And if you ignore it, then you're really ignoring a piece of yourself. It's really kind of just self-explanatory. You had an emotional experience with a person, and here it is, it's showing in the form of a memory.
Right. And what frees us up, or what frees us from these myths, is like no more rules, not timelines, not pressure. What helps is permission, and I've said this before: permission to feel, permission to rest, permission to take your time, permission to grieve in your own way, permission to name it, permission to feel, right? And when you stop fighting your grief, you create a space for healing. When you stop thinking about how other people or other family members or your friends or whoever in your circle is going to judge you because of how you're grieving, when you stop that or refrain from doing that, then you create space for healing. It's not rushed, it's not suppressed. It's just being honest about where you are in the process and how you feel, right? Any last remarks as we get ready to close out, Cousin Kareem?
Just let your emotions express themselves the way they're going to express them. Stop holding them back. Whether it's in front of somebody or in the privacy of your own home, just let your emotions be explored. That's it.
That's it. So if any of these myths sound familiar, be gentle with yourself. And I mean, like I said, we've all experienced, because we've even said the same thing. Some of us have said these same exact things to other people. It is time to stop, right? And like, you didn't make them up, because you were taught. We were all taught these because we've heard them. It was learned. And now it's time to unlearn them. And of course, unlearning them takes time. Unlearning them, it takes you being cautious, like really being cautious and being aware of what you're saying to someone. As they say, think before you speak, right? So if today's episode spoke to you, we truly love to hear from you. Share your story, leave a comment, or pass this conversation along to someone who might need it. Sometimes healing starts with, I thought of you when I heard this. You can connect with us on YouTube at Sometimes We're Bougie, Sometimes We Hood, or SBSH Grief Podcast on YouTube. On Instagram, Queen of Life Empowerment or SBSH Grief Podcast. On Facebook, Sometimes We're Bougie, Sometimes We're Hood. On TikTok, Sometimes Bougie, Sometimes Hood. And if you would like to send us an email, Sometimes Bougie, Sometimes Hood at gmail.com. So going forward, be kind to yourself, hold space for your emotions, and remember, you are never alone. You are carrying the most beautiful love there is. This has been Sometimes We Bougie.
Sometimes we Hood.
But we are we're always human. So next week, we're going to talk about how grief shows up in the body and why our body reacts the way it does.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So until then, we'll see you next Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have
All right. Enjoy, people.
It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance.